Well, have you heard senators, as you've heard, senators are debating bipartisan immigration legislation on this Friday. The proposal would create an additional path to citizenship for the nearly 11 million undocumented immigrants who are living in the U.S. It would also work to stem the unemployment of those in the country illegally. It would improve border security and address visa issues that are related to high-skilled workers. No votes are scheduled on the proposal today, as debate is expected to continue into next week and beyond. As we await further debate on immigration, the Senate Judiciary Committee held a markup session on immigration that took place last week. And here's a look at some of that debate.
Refugees, Section 3403 allows the President to admit into our country and grant permanent legal status to an entire classes of aliens that are classified as refugees. Currently, refugees undergo specialized and individualized assessment. Why does the bill dramatically expand refugee law in this manner? It seems to imply that the current system in which we bring in over 75,000 people per year isn't adequate.
Well, first, let me say that it does not expand the refugee status, but every single person has to go through the review. I think what you're referring to is Senator Lautenberg's offering each year as part of the appropriation process, the so-called Lautenberg Amendment. And what Frank has done, and I think done well, is to say rather than proving up, for example, in every case that, going back in history, you were a Jew in the Soviet Union and discriminated against, we are going to accept the premise that Jewish people in the Soviet Union were discriminated against, or a Coptic Christian in Egypt, or a Christian or someone who is an evangelical Christian in Iran today. So instead of saying every single person who comes before the immigration court has to prove up the premise that his class is being discriminated against in a country, we establish that there are certain known examples of discrimination which we can refer to by reference rather than proving up in each case. Okay. And as my staff reminded me, still, every single person is subject to extensive security checks I described earlier.
Let me move on to interior enforcement. This would involve new judges, staff attorneys, and support staff. And basically it gets at the proposition we're making these decisions way ahead of time through this legislation and maybe not knowing exactly what's needed right now. This is the premise. The bill mandates the hiring of at least 75 immigration court judges over the next 3 years, as well as at least one staff attorney or law clerk and one legal assistant for each immigration judge. In addition, the bill mandates the hiring of at least 30 staff attorneys, including the necessary additional support staff for the next 3 years. So, as I indicated, that's a lot of new judges, attorneys, and support staff. I note that these are mandatory hirings of new judges, attorneys, etc. The bill provides for no downward discretion with respect to these hirings. The reality is that we don't know whether the immigration court caseload will increase or decrease under this bill, especially with a massive new RPI program. 2 questions. Why is this a mandatory hiring of new judges, etc., and not an authorization for more personnel of
The quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that Michael London, a law clerk with the Finance Committee, and Kate Glazebrook and Jonathan Diem, interns with the Finance Committee, be allowed on the Senate floor for the remainder of the 2013 calendar year.
Without objection.
Thank you very much. Madam President, I take to the floor today in strong support of comprehensive immigration reform. And the action that was taken yesterday by the House of Representatives really underscores how critical the work we'll do in these next few weeks is to the future of our nation. What did the House Republicans do yesterday? They voted to deport hundreds of thousands of young people who we refer to as dreamers. These young people were brought to this country through no fault of their own, and they are contributing greatly to our society and our economy. Some of these young people were brought here at 2 years old, 4 years old. They had no idea they were doing anything wrong. Now, Senator Durbin has been working for years to pass the DREAM Act. President Obama implemented the DREAM Act. He stopped deporting these people if they meet certain requirements, and those requirements are pretty clear. They have to be truly good people. They have to be people who are getting their education, serving in the military, being responsible. But yesterday, the House Republicans said no. They said deport these dreamers. That's not what the American people want. In poll after poll, the American people say if someone is brought here through no fault of their own at a young age, this is their country. But yet the House Republicans would say deport them. And the American people know, and this, I never say I speak for the American people. I'm just talking about polls. Polls that I've seen, and Madam President, polls that you've seen, show that the people know that we need immigration reform, comprehensive reform, that will take people out of the shadows, that will make sure that they are not afraid to be part of society. They'll buy homes, they'll start businesses, they'll create jobs, they'll lift our economy, they'll lift their families out of poverty, and they'll strengthen our country. The American people get this. Like so many Americans, I am proud of my immigrant roots. My mother came here from Austria as an infant. She never finished high school because she had to work to support her family. My dad, he was from an immigrant family too. The only one of 9 children to be born in America, and the only one to graduate from college. And then, when I was a little girl, graduate from law school. When my mother passed away, I remember going through her memorabilia, and I saw a certificate in there that was wrapped in plastic. She stored it with other valuables in her jewelry box. It was the only document she protected in that fashion. It meant so much to my mother. It was her certificate of citizenship. That's what the dream of citizenship means to the millions of Californians and to the millions of Americans who are now forced to live in the shadows. For immigration reform to be truly comprehensive, it must include a path to citizenship for all 11 million undocumented immigrants in our country today, and it must include the DREAM Act. We can't have 2 classes of citizens in America, one with full citizenship and one with half citizenship. That's not the promise of our nation. The bill that we will debate next week addresses this problem. It provides a tough but fair path to citizenship. It is also crucial that we pass reforms that protect workers and their families from exploitation and abuse. Too many immigrants, especially women, face sexual harassment in the workplace, violence, and discrimination. The Judiciary Committee bill includes critical protections for women, including U visas to keep women safe from domestic violence. A strong reform bill must also include a fair and effective guest worker program, which provides workers with livable wages and strong labor protections. And this bill meets many of these tests. Would I have made it even stronger? Yes. Would my friend in the chair have made it even stronger in many ways? Absolutely. But the bill is a real step forward. When we pass comprehensive immigration reform, we don't just help immigrant families, we help all Americans. I would like to see family reunification be made stronger in this bill. I commend those who worked on this. I know they had to hammer out these compromises, and I know, having brought a successful highway bill to passage, a successful WRDA bill to passage on the Senate floor, I know I don't get everything I want. So I'm sympathetic to the fact that this isn't a perfect bill, but, Madam President, I know you and I will support making this bill better, making this bill stronger, and maybe we will persuade colleagues to go with us. But we have to remember, this bill isn't the be-all and the end-all. We can make it stronger with the coming months and years. Now, according to a 2010 USC study, University of Southern California, when we create a path to citizenship, it will result in 25,000 new jobs, $3 billion in direct and indirect spending in California alone every single year. Nationwide, our immigration bill will increase our GDP, our gross domestic product, by $1.5 trillion over 10 years. It will increase wages for workers. That's what happens when workers come out of the shadows. It will lead to between 750,000 and 900,000 new jobs, according to the Center for American Progress. When workers come out of the shadows, their wages rise, they open bank accounts, they buy homes, they spend money in their communities, they are known to find new businesses. And businesses will benefit by having access to talented workers in fields ranging from manufacturing to health care to agriculture to high tech. Taxpayers are going to benefit. You're going to hear horror stories about how expensive this is. The fact is, the studies show taxpayers, that is, studies that don't have a bias show, that taxpayers in the first 3 years alone, including $310 million a year in state income taxes, which will help support education and other important services just in my home state of California. So we will see workers benefiting, yes, from higher wages, but also better working conditions. And they will get respect, and they will get dignity. And what that means is they will be proud members of our community. Families and children will benefit when we lift the fear of being deported and separated from their loved ones. I know the DREAM Act that Senator Durbin has worked on for so many years. In the bill, it does impact the families of the Dreamers. It will help them, because we don't want to separate families. So I'm going to be working on many amendments and offering some to improve this bill. Amendments to provide a fair and reasonable path to citizenship, amendments to ensure we treat immigrants with dignity and respect, amendments that are friendly to family reunification, amendments that are friendly to workers. Workers are the backbone of this country. I want to close with a quote from President John F. Kennedy. Back in 1958, he wrote a book entitled A Nation of Immigrants. In that book, he eloquently described how immigrants have strengthened our nation. I already talked about my own immigrant roots. This is what John Kennedy wrote, quote, "This was the secret of America, a nation of people with the fresh memory of old traditions who dared to explore new frontiers, people eager to build lives for themselves in a spacious society that didn't restrict their freedom of choice and their action." And he added, quote, "Every ethnic minority in seeking its own freedom helped to strengthen the fabric of liberty in American life," unquote. Those words were true back in 1958, and they are just as true today. Americans are ready, and they're waiting for comprehensive immigration reform. I want to thank our colleagues who worked so hard on this bill, including my own colleague, Senator Feinstein, who worked so hard on the Ag Jobs title. We have to protect that title. There are those who would weaken it, and we can't weaken it. It's put together in such a way, Madam President, that you have the growers supporting it and the workers. That's pretty good when you can get those two sides together. So the President has said the time is now. I agree. The time is past now. We need to get this done. I think Senator Leahy has handled this bill beautifully. I believe 150 amendments were adopted in the committee, and also many others were offered. The system has been fair, and Senator Reid has given us plenty of time to offer amendments, to debate these issues. I'm excited about it. My state is waiting with bated breath for this. It is so overdue. Let's get to work. Let's make comprehensive immigration reform a reality. And I am pleased to say to the President, I leave this floor with great hopes that we can get it done. Thank you very much. I would note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
President, is there a quorum call? I'd ask that
The Senate is in a quorum
I would
call.
ask that it be dispensed with.
Without
And
objection.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
I understand there are two bills at the desk, and I ask for their first reading en bloc.
The clerk will read the titles of the bills for the first time.
S1121, a bill to stop the National Security Agency from spying on citizens of the United States and for other purposes. H.R. 126, an act to direct the Secretary of the Interior to enter into an agreement to provide for management of the free-roaming wild horses in and around the Currituck National Wildlife Refuge.
I now ask for a second reading en bloc, object to my own request en bloc.
Objection having been heard. The bills will be read for a second time on the next legislative day.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it adjourn until 2 p.m. on Monday, June 10, 2013. That following the prayer and the pledge, the morning hour be deemed expired, the journal of proceedings be approved to date, and the time for the two leaders be reserved for their later use in the day, and that following any leader remarks, the Senate resume consideration of the motion to proceed to S-744, the Comprehensive Immigration Reform Bill, under the previous order.
Without objection.
Madam President, we expect to swear in Senator-designate Chiazza during Monday's session. At 5:30 p.m. on Monday, there will be a roll call vote on passage of the Farm Bill. If there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it adjourn under the previous order.
The Senate stands adjourned until 2 p.m. Monday.
Wrapping up legislative work for the Senate this week, they started today work on the Immigration and Border Security Bill, which would provide a path to citizenship for the estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants. More debate expected next week in the Senate. They'll also try to finish the Farm Bill. Live coverage here on C-SPAN 2. A reminder, the 2013 Congressional Directory is available, a handy guide to the current Congress with updated listings.